Hello, dear classmates. My name is Cristiane Tinoco, and I will start by talking to you about figurative language, followed by Rafael and Thais. We are going to start introducing the topic. What are the meanings of figurative language, figures of speech? They are said to have ornamental functions. They are always decorating a text or a speech in a special and giving it aesthetic value. So they are usually considered to color the text, yes, to make it more painted than just a simple narrative. The figurative language is an extended usage from the literate language. When you are literal, the meaning, it does not depend on a figurative extension from another meaning like figurative language. So when I say it's a child, child has its literal meaning, yes? It's a human person of a certain age. And then you have here the literal meaning. When I come to say that a grown man to a grown man, he's a child, then you have figurative language. Yes, here I'm applying one literal concept of being immature, not an adult, to say that this person is a child, meaning he doesn't know how to behave as an adult. Probably people will understand it. And the discussion here is that we have different approaches. Yes, we have empirical linguistics that considers the aspect of figurative language and semantics in general, a set of generalizations, yes? So they try to explain the phenomena and imply rules for us to follow to understand the rest. In generative linguistics, we have what we call the Chomskyan commitment that explains that language is kind of like mathematics and it has its symbols and we can find and manipulate the systems in order to find patterns and everything else. In cognitive linguistics, we have a huge study of figurative language. And it's in cognitive linguistics there that people try to study it, but it's within the context. It's generally with a taking from other areas other than linguistics. Yes, you take from psychology, developmental psychology, neurobiology, anthropology, the context itself, you take into consideration other aspects that were in context. Griffiths, that's the author we are following here in our semantics course, he's not going to use the cognitive linguistic approach. He will rely on this difference that I mentioned to you, from semantic knowledge to encyclopedic knowledge. So a person who says that he knows a language, they have a certain amount of semantic knowledge. Yes, this context-free semantic knowledge, like with the example I gave of child, the example of dog or glass, you have this context-free semantic knowledge. So you can have a literal interpretation, and you also can have the figurative interpretation. You can have the literal meaning or the figurative meaning. In the example that's here, she is in her bedroom. You can imagine a woman or a girl inside of a room. That's the bedroom. When I say she's in love, we can even make a picture of a person surrounded by hearts and with eyes like hearts, but it is not literal. Yes, she's not inside of a place called love. So that's the point that we're studying when we study figurative language. And that's where we're going to discuss more examples. The figurative interpretation is when you know, they say, yes, you can test when there is an unlikelihood of a proposition being true. So Griffiths gives an example that works. The face of the mother curdle. Curdling is something that doesn't happen to a face, it happens to liquids. So immediately the person thinks, oh, this proposition of the face acting as a liquid is not true, so I'm going to interpret it as a figurative language. But then Griffiths gives an example of no man is an island. Here we can have both interpretations, yes? You can consider that a man is actually not an island that plays in the ocean, yes, a land surrounded by water. And you can also think of the figurative interpretation that a man is not an island because a man needs other people. We are sociable creatures. So this is the figurative interpretation. So this is a test that doesn't work when we are going to interpret figuratively. So the definition, I'm sorry, I wrote it wrong, of Griffiths is, a figurative interpretation is necessary when the explicature that involves treating one or more words as if they had meanings different from their literal ones. So you're always gonna test in your head, oh, one man is not an island. What other interpretations, what other different meanings can the word island mean? And then he also points out that figures of speech, the ones we're going to explain here, irony, metaphors, metonymy, similes, they are not idioms. Why? Because idioms, they have to be learned. And figures of speech, you can kind of connect and interpret and come to interpretation. And they're all never going, not never, but usually we are not going to have only one interpretation. So when I say something like, it's raining cats and dogs, a person can interpret that it's raining a lot, yes, but in order to use that idiom, you have to learn it. Otherwise, you're not going to know that in English, when you want to say it's raining a lot, you are going to say it's raining cats and dogs. I hope I was clear on the difference between figures of speech and idioms, but we're going to have some more examples in the activity. Now, let's talk a little bit about irony, and I'm going to show you a video that's very interesting about irony. Irony is the non-literal language that makes salient the discrepancy between expectations and reality. So when I'm walking out of my apartment on a sunny day for a walk with my dog, and suddenly it starts to rain and I say, oh, this is just perfect. You're going to interpret I'm being ironic because, of course, perfection is not in the situation described. Do you see that's impossible to interpret and analyze irony without the context, without explaining? Because if you get just semantics to explain the figures of speech, it's not going to be enough. You need to understand and get a little bit of pragmatics in order to analyze the situation. Because if I just say it's perfect, you're going to believe something has reached perfection. Something is wonderful. But when the situation is described, you can see that I actually uttered the sentence, it's perfect, but what I meant was it's a disaster. It's terrible. Yes? So that's why facial expressions, tone of voice, attitude, and other contextual elements, other contextual clues, they need to be taken into consideration when analyzing irony. So now, I'm going to show you a video where you are going to see what I'm talking about and analyze Alanis Morissette lyrics of Ironic.
For the voice disaffected woman. She's a moaning cow. Now, even people who like Alanis Morissette have to admit she's a whinging bin. Honestly, it's not fair. Only moaning cow, Jesus. No wonder he left you. Can't say. Remember that song, Ironic? Remember that one? Isn't this ironic? No, it's not. Ask me another. She kept naming all these things in the song that were supposed to be ironic, and none of them were. They were all just unfortunate. The song should have been called Unfortunate. The only ironic thing about that song is that it's called Ironic and was written by a woman who doesn't know what irony is. That's quite ironic when you think about it. She should have called the song Tall. Would have been a good name. I don't know how you'd spell it, but it would have been a good name. Here's Alanis Morissette with her new single, Tall. Take it from the album, Because you look at some of the lyrics, like a traffic jam when you're already late. That's not ironic, that's just a pain in the hole. When was the last time you were late for something, got stuck in a traffic jam and thought, oh, look at the irony on this, eh? I tell you, I was in a fierce ironic traffic jam the other day. I'm not sure. The irony was 90. No, there's nothing ironic about being stuck in a traffic jam when you're late for something. Oh, unless you're a town planner. If you were a town planner and you were late for a seminar of town planners, which you were giving a talk on how you solve the problem of traffic congestion in your area, couldn't get to it because you got stuck in a traffic jam, that'd be well ironic. Lads, I'm sorry I missed it. You'll never guess it. Maybe that's what you meant. It's like rain on your wedding day. Only if you're getting married to a weatherman and he set the date.
So later you can continue watching and perceive that that's tragedy. Yes, that's unfortunate. That's not irony. Irony is related to the breaking of expectations, of utterances, of what you are saying to what is happening or to what you mean. And we're going to see more examples in the activity. See you in a bit.
I'm going to talk about presuppositions and metonymy. As we have been studying, utterances, whether figuratively or literally intended, are not made in a vacuum. When we interpret utterances, we use as background our best guesses about what the communicator assumes are the preconceptions and relevant information that we can bring to the comprehension task. And such presumed to be shared beliefs that are taken for granted by the speaker or writer and are expected to be used for interpreting the message are called presuppositions. As in the chapter we studied to do this presentation by Griffith. Presuppositions do not have to be true. Communications may depend on mutual awareness of fictions and pretense, and ideologies, prejudice, national stereotypes that are false of many individuals, and so on. That is why presuppositions assumed to be shared between people communicating by means of language were said above to be beliefs, preconceptions, and information rather than knowledge. For anything that humans talk or write about, there are almost always presuppositions to be retrieved from memory. Presuppositions are involved in formulating utterances and interpreting them. So now we are going to see some examples. So here we have, Bob knows that Jane is a Beatles fan. The sentence could not be felicitously uttered in a context in which it was a matter of dispute whether Jane was a Beatles fan or not. The sentence entails that Jane is a bit of fan, and in general, one cannot simply assert claims which trivially entails prepositions which are at issue in a conversation. The sentence and the preposition survives various transformations of our original sentence, including negation, Bob doesn't know that Jane is a Beatles fan. Question, does Bob know that Jane is a Beatles fan? Conditional, if Bob knows that Jane is a Beatles fan, then he would take her to Liverpool. None of these entail that Jane is a Beatles fan, but still none could be felicitously uttered in a context in which it was a matter of dispute whether Jane was a Beatles fan or not. We also have presuppositions triggers. Certain presuppositions are attributable to the use of certain expressions and constructions. So we have here some examples. Mary is reading War and Peace again. So if again is omitted, the presupposition that Mary has read War and Peace will disappear. We only know that she has read that in the past. We presuppose that because of the word again. So when we read this sentence, we know that she has read this book before. And then another one, when we have quit and stop and the verb with ing, this gives rise to a presupposition that the subject was doing this in the past. Like we have here, Mary quit smoking last month. So if she quit smoking last month, we presuppose that she used to smoke before that. We have also the verb start, and then the verb in ing has the opposite presupposition. Mary started smoking last month. So we can presuppose that Mary didn't smoke before that. So she didn't used to smoke. She were not used to smoke, and now she started smoking since last month. Mary is aware that she will not get a grant this year. So we have factive predicates like aware, unaware, remember, that as presuppose that as is true. When we use these factive predicates like aware, unaware, remember, we presuppose that what the person is aware of, for example, is true. So Mary is aware that she will not get a grant this year. So we can know that this is true. The same happens with remember that and unaware. So she's unaware that she will not get a grant this year. So we can presuppose that she really was unaware of the fact. And then pretend presupposes that what the person is saying is false. Like Mary pretended that she could speak German. So she cannot speak German. We can presuppose that. And now we have remember or forget. To do something presupposes that the subject was supposed or required to do something. Mary remembered to call her mother. Harry forgot to bring the cake. So Harry, he was required to bring the cake to the party, but he forgot to do that. And Mary was supposed to call her mother when she got home, for example, and she remembered to do that. So it was like a task, something she was required to do. Presuppositions triggers can be used by the author to establish a favorable or unfavorable bias throughout the text. So these presuppositions in general, they can be used by newspapers or the media or the writer of a book, anything, to pass to the reader or the listener the information they want to pass. So they can be biased, right? They can give you the favorable or unfavorable opinion about some subject, for example. They can be used to do that. So here I have some headlines examples of presuppositions. So I had a headline from BBC, coronavirus. Why are infections rising again in the US? So we can presuppose from here that first, like there are many levels, but if you are reading this, headline, you can presuppose that you can read in English, that you have access to a newspaper, but there is a disease called coronavirus, right? You can presuppose that. There is an infectious disease and is rising again in the US, because they are not asking whether it is rising again or not. They are simply saying that the infections are rising again in the US. So this is the presupposition we can take from this headline, right? Oops. Okay, another one in here. You got a coronavirus vaccine, but you still became infected. How did that happen? This is from the Washington Post. So what is the presupposition we can take from this headline? First, that it has the bias problem, right? Because if I am against the vaccine, I can use this to say, oh, I'm not gonna take the vaccine because I can still get infected. It's not good for me. It's not scientifically proved that it's gonna help me. So there is this problem. But the presupposition we can have is that after you get vaccinated, it is expected that you won't get infected, because they're saying, how did that happen? So it was not supposed to happen, right? This is what it is communicating. So it can also presuppose that people are getting protected, right, from the virus and everything. Now we have some advertising. I put some examples on advertisement campaigns as well. So this one in the left is from the Arizona Science Center. And we can see that the creator of that presupposes that the colors red and yellow make you hungry, because it says, why do the colors red and yellow make you hungry? So they are presupposing that the colors, they're telling you that the colors make you hungry, right? And they put a sign right in front of McDonald's store. So that you would presuppose as well that the colors red and yellow make you hungry because of McDonald's. So the placement of the sign is really interesting. I found this very creative. So this is telling you without you even knowing that these colors make you hungry, right? And here on the right, we have this sign saying the illusion is fake, the beer is real. So it's a very creative and fun ad, and presupposes that there is an illusion in here, right? I guess you can see that. And to make more stronger the fact that the beer is real, right? So it must be with good ingredients and all of that. Okay, now we're going to talk about metonymy. Traditional accounts of metonymy define it in terms of a person or object being referred to, using as the vehicle a word whose literal denotation is somehow pertinently related. We have here this picture that I put is a sign with a bread. So instead of saying like bakery, they put a bread in there, and you know what you will find. If you wanna go here, you will find bread, so it's a bakery. Metonymy is a figure of speech in which one word or phrase is substituted for another with which is closely associated, such as crown for royalty. It is also the rhetorical strategy of describing something indirectly by referring to things around it, as in describing someone's clothing to characterize the individual. Metonym vehicles must be distinctive properties of the people or object referred to. So here we have some examples. If you say there is a mountain of work on my desk. So this is completely normal. Someone can say that in regular American English, right? But what you are really saying is that there is a pile of work on my desk, and pile and mountain, they are distinctive, but they are related somehow. Like the shape of a pile is like the shape of a mountain. So This is a good example of metonymy. Also Hollywood, to represent the people in the movie industry, but you can say people saying Hollywood, Hollywood all the time when they are talking about the people in the movie industry, right? Also the FBI says the FBI, I don't know, arrested someone. They're not, like the FBI cannot say anything, right? So there's the people in the FBI, the people who work there that do this stuff. But it's very common to see this metonymy. As well, to give someone a hand, you're not gonna cut off your hand and give to someone. It's like a help, to help someone, to make a favor, right? But we used to say like this, to give someone a hand. The White House is also the same example of Hollywood and FBI. The White House made a statement today, so it's not the White House, but people who work there, right? But when you say the White House, you understand that they are talking about these people. And the Crown of England, meaning the Queen, right? The royal in general, actually. Also, a metonymy can be another metonymic process is the one in which a part of a longer expression is used to stand for the whole expression. For example, Danish for Danish pastry, Ridgemont High for Ridgemont High School, the States for the United States. Even in the other example here, in the headlines, there is this example, right? Wire infections rising again in US, not in the United States of America. This is an example of metonymy. So by using this, right, this allows writers to express themselves creatively. Like, since you can replace one word by the other, you can attribute the senses of this new word to the first word. And this, you are being creative. You can attribute more meanings that you want for your text. Metonymy gives writers the ability to make single words or phrases more powerful, is related to what I said before, and help writers to be more concise, since for advertisements, for example, shorter sentences can be really powerful. Okay, again, some examples in headlines. Kamala Harris heads to Walter Reed for routine checkup. White House says, like I said before, the people responsible for giving information to the press were replaced by the White House in this example. It's from CNBC, this headline. And here Hollywood has resumed production, but can it last through a second wave? So Hollywood, in this case, is representing the people who work in the film industry. And another one here, wave, right? Wave is something that we see in the ocean, but in this case is being used to talk about coronavirus peaks, right? Okay, now we have two advertisements, and they are using the same strategies. They are both taking what their products are made from and exaggerating it, as to say that they are made only by that. And in this case, tomatoes and grapes or raspberries. I don't know. So this Heinz advertising, no one grows ketchup like Heinz. And here you can see like the bottle of ketchup representing a tomato. And here the bottle of Fanta representing made by the fruits that it is made from, right? So metonymy is a really successful way to persuade people in advertisement campaigns as well. The goal here is to communicate to the customer that they are buying something natural and not something made by the industry.
Hello everyone, and now I am going to talk about metaphors. But before talking about it, let's keep these three pieces of information in mind. The first one, metaphors tend to provoke thought and feeling to a greater extent than more literal descriptions do. Stern wrote, that, like a picture, a metaphor displays rather than describe its content. So it's important that metaphor displays rather than describe its content. And the third one, metaphor, the topic to which the rest of the chapter leads, depends largely on encyclopedic knowledge. So let's analyze the first example. In 2005, Ken Livingstone, the mayor of London, was reported to have said the words quoted below. Example 1. I have been through several media firestorms. I have been through several media firestorms. After refusing to withdraw remarks he had made the previous week that several newspapers and quite a few other people maintained he should apologize for. In this example, the word used metaphorically is firestorms. Firestorms. The author cited the precise date, February 2005, 15th, because it came only the day after widely reported commemorative events in Germany of the firestorms caused by the bombing of Dresden 60 years earlier. But why is this extra information relevant? Do you remember what I had said in the previous slide? Metaphors tend to provoke thought and feeling. When the mayor of London spoke, I have been through several media firestorms. He could assume that firestorms would easily evoke information about the Dresden firestorms as a presuppositional base for interpreting his metaphor. So it was intentional. He knew that people could link the two things. This example, I have been through several media firestorms, proves Stern's theory of metaphor, that the metaphorical vehicle, firestorms in this case, point to contextually available presuppositions. In this case, many people would have understood that the mayor is criticizing media behavior towards him. So in this case, the mayor of London, he used the metaphor firestorm to criticize the media behavior towards him. The role of presupposition in the interpretation of this example exemplifies another feature of metaphor. Matters that they may be relatively unfamiliar to addressees. Particulars of Livingstone's conflicts with the media are elucidated via a vehicle that they are presumed to know more about, having only one day earlier been offered descriptions of firestorms. But there are also mind-taxing metaphors, especially in poetry, where the reader might not have the needed presuppositions, but is forced either to give up in bafflement or to consider hard what could be that the poet presupposes about the vehicle that could yield a reasonable interpretation. Example 2. Metaphors have been said to be central to scientific theorizing. They certainly facilitate explanation in the popularization of science. So let's look at this example. The Gulf Stream is not really a stream. Then it's merely the western edge of a giant spine lens of water. Two words used metaphorically in this sentence are of interest: stream and lens. In this case, the spinning lens image stimulates exploratory thought. Remember, metaphors tend to provoke thought. But why does lens give us a good metaphor to use with water? The answer is you can see through a lens and you can see through water. Likewise, a great lens-shaped disk of water can be detected by scientists because of the way it bends light and sound waves that slant through it. Now, look at the first image. When something rotates, its center moves least, and there is a region some distance east of the Gulf Stream where the ocean more or less stands still. It is the Sargasso Sea, image 2. So the Gulf Stream is not really a stream. Then it's merely the western edge of a giant spinning lens of water, as you can see in the second image. Now, analyzing is not really a stream. When the scientist said that, he indicated that metaphors can be judged to be true or false, and he rated this one as inaccurate. So again, the Gulf Stream is not really a stream. Then it's merely the western edge of a giant spiny lens of water, as you can see in the two images. Metaphor interpretation tends to be harder and potentially more rewarding than metonymy. In metonymy, the vehicle names the contextually significant aspect of the reference. For example, the sailor's hands. However, when making sense of metaphor, an idea is pointed to, and it is left to the addressee to find its salient features for a satisfactory interpretation. Proper names do not have conventional meanings that language users know from knowing the language, but useful ideas can be evoked by getting people to think of what they believe about the bearer of a name. For example, example 4. What do you think when you hear this sentence? She's a Mary Robson. Well, out of context, she's a Mary Robson could be intended either literally, she's a person who has the name Mary Robson, or metaphorically, she is a person who is similar in some contextually relevant ways to the law professor Mary Robson, who was president of Ireland, the woman in this image. Another example. He is a vast, metaphorically speaking, data bank of information. This was from BBC presenter Sarah Montag writing about James Nutty. She was signaling that vast should not be taken literally as a comment on his physical size, but treated as a modifier within the vehicle phrase. Readers were to do their interpretation by contemplating how the main features of a vast data bank of information could help one form an impression of the nature of her colleague, that she rated him as extremely knowledgeable. That's a metaphor. So when she points that he is a vast, metaphorically speaking, data bank of information, she's not talking about his physical size. She's talking about his knowledge. So that's a metaphor. To sum up, what we need to understand is that metaphor is a figure of speech that directly compares one thing to another thing for rhetorical effect. Let's look at the last example. In William Shakespeare, As You Like It, the playwright writes, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. This is an example of a metaphor. Shakespeare is comparing the world to a stage by saying one is the other. However, he does not mean this literally. In other words, he doesn't literally believe the world is a stage. The comparison is rhetorical. By comparing the world to a stage and the people in the world as players on it, he's invited us to think about the similarities between the two, and by extension, the meaning of human nature nature, and our place in the world. Similes are metaphors too. Unlike metaphors, similes differ from metaphors by containing words such as like or as to make a comparison. So similes create a comparison using like and as. Perhaps you will recognize this famous example of simile from Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. So in this example, it is said that something is like something else. Life is like a box of chocolates. Example 2. The pursuit of absolute safety is like trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. The sentence in this example exemplifies what would be called a simile because it is figurative and hinges on the word like. Is like trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. Now, pay attention to that. Stern states that similes should be analyzed on the same model as metaphors. Let's look at example 3. The pursuit of absolute safety, it is trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. Well, he's not saying that something is like something else, that the pursuit of absolute safety is like trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. In this case, he's affirming that the pursuit of absolute safety, it is trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. It's trying to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. In this case, it's obviously a metaphor, but it strikes us as equivalent figuratively and communicatively to example 2. So to sum up, a simile is saying something is like something else. A metaphor is often poetically saying something is something else.
Now it's time to start the activities. So I'm going to propose 3 activities and my friends will propose some more for you to practice and to put all the theory we talked about into analysis now, yes? The first one, there are many places where irony is constantly found. Of course, in situation comedies, in sitcoms, in many movies, and in comic strips. So I'm going to present 2 comic strips and I want you to think about them with me and tell me what is the figure of speech you can find in the comic strip. In the first one, we have Garfield, our beloved cat. I put on running shoes, jogging shorts, and a sweatband. That's enough exercise for today. Sorry. So what is the figure of speech we can find? Can you tell me? It is irony, yes? When he says that's enough exercise for today, he actually means that he didn't exercise at all. So it's not enough for sure. It's the opposite of enough. It's no exercise, yes? He's being ironic. Next activity. This is from Nate. What's the figure of speech? The Adventures of Nate, super 6th grader. This comic strip is from 1991. It's 30 years now, yes? Catch it, Nate. Touchdown. Nate, Nate, Nate. These are the voices of fans. Way to go, Nate. You won the game. Thanks, coach. Nate, he's so cute. I saw him first. And then his classmate comes and gets the comic strip that he's drawing and says, yes, this is realistic. And then he answers, do you think I should add more babes, more girls? So what is the figure of speech in this comic strip? And where it is? Yes, once again is irony. When she says, this is realistic, what does she mean? When we analyze the context and her face, like, she means it's totally unrealistic. It's something he is imagining. It doesn't happen in real life. So it is actually the opposite of what she's uttering. The proposition here cannot be attained only with the meaning of the words, yes, this is, I'm sorry again, realistic. Yes, we need to analyze all the context in order to find irony. Something I forgot to say during my explanation is that all the figures of speech are usually difficult for foreign learners. When you are speaking a foreign language, it's very hard for you to grasp the irony. Oh my God, I'm allergic to the figures of speech. So it's very hard for you to get comedy, to get figures of speech. Yes? And the next one is taken from a poem. Read the poem and tell me. How do you expect this poem to finish? I'm sorry, guys. My own dear love, he is strong and bold, and he cares not what comes after. His words ring sweet as a chime of gold, and his eyes are lit with laughter. His jubilant as a flag unfurled. Oh, a girl should not forget him. My own dear love, he's all my word. How do we expect it to finish? He's all my word, and I wish we are happy forever. Our love will never end. We expect something that will contribute to this beautiful description of her love, yes? But what she gets is, and I wish I'd never met him. So I took this from a website that's called Literary Devices, which is very, very interesting for us to analyze and have different points of view on the literary devices. And there they say this is a situational irony. Yes, so you build an expectation on your reader and then you come with the opposite meaning. So that's what we consider situational irony, which is something we find in some movies. For example, Monsters Incorporated. It's totally situational irony because they are monsters, but they are supposed to scare children, but they are constantly scared by the children. So all the situation is ironic. Not like Alanis Morissette's song that's just unfortunate or tragical. Let's go to the next activity with Rafael.
So for the activity proposed, identify the information that is being presupposed. There may be more than one presupposition in a single example. I have here 2 advertising campaigns as well. So this one says, to you who always say It is okay, I'll tape this. Happy Father's Day. And here we have the tape in which is written, Daddy, I broke it again. This one from the right, I found very creative. Stay protected with verified news about COVID-19 from the newspaper La Voz. And you have this person like reading the newspaper, and in the same time, it is representing a mask, right? So for metonymy, the activity, identify the metonymies presented in the following examples. Silicon Valley is an important innovation hub. After the protests, maybe Washington will listen to the voters. You are all my life. I need a favor. Can you give me a hand?
Here's an activity about simile and metaphor. Read each sentence below, label it as either a simile or a metaphor. A, my life is an open book. B, that baby is as cute as a button. C, baby, you're a firework. D, the early bird gets the worm. E, she plays guitar like breathing air. F, Eric sings like an angel. G, Eliana is a walking dictionary. H, the instructions were as clear as mud. I, Laura is a shining star. J, the student was as busy as a bee. Now I give you 5 minutes and then we're going to check the answers together. So good luck. I'm back. If you need more time, just pause the video because now we're going to check the answers. So, letter A, my life is an open book. It's a metaphor because you are poetically and metaphorically saying that something is something else. Your life is an open book. B, that baby is as cute as a button. Simile. C, baby, you're a firework. That's a metaphor. D, the tricky one. The early bird gets the worm. It's a metaphor because you're saying that people who wake up early are early birds. Are early birds. That's a metaphor. E, she plays guitar like breathing air. Simile. F, Eric sings like an angel. Simile. G, Eliana is a walking dictionary. Metaphor. H, the instructions were as clear as mud. That's a simile. I, Laura is a shining star. Metaphor. J, the student was as busy as a bee. Simile. I hope you enjoyed this activity.